Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a story where our OP actually won the neighbor war. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Karen next door. My hubs and I got our first house 15 years ago. We're in a rural area, just houses randomly sprouting up along a small country highway. Next door was an old retiree with nothing better to do but be a pain in everyone's neck. House 2 miles down the road with too many junk cars, he complained to the county government. Did that new barn have proper permits? Report them. Was someone too loud? Call the cops. It's a rural country road, not an HOA. Apparently this dude was such a Karen, he was actually chased out of 2 HOAs prior. A real peach. Let's call him Bob. Didn't like us moving in next to him. He had a nice big new house and ours was much more modest. He wanted to buy our property and expand his land, but was too cheap to fork up the money. Well, housing market being what it was, we got our house dirt cheap and stole it right out from under his nose. Bob really didn't like us. The house was a fixer-upper, and Bob regularly liked to phone the permit office to make sure we had all our permits. If he deemed us too loud, there's a hunting lease behind us. Guess what? Noisy things were going bang-bang during deer season. He'd call the police. My husband and father-in-law have dealt with his kind for years, so they knew exactly how to mess with Bob. Working outside, they say stuff very loudly like, "I can't wait to put up this second story on the house, and this pool will be so nice." Permit office would call us, cops would show up. "No, officer, I have no idea what you're talking about." After enough of these calls, they finally stopped responding. Then we could do stuff to really mess with Bob. We got a pig. He really didn't like her. Neither did I, but it was worth it. We got a rooster. He really didn't like that. We left our Christmas decorations up until March. Oh, lordy, raised that man's blood pressure. We put up a fence. It was initially open across 3 lots and made his yard look like a bowling alley. I guess he finally had enough. One day, 18-wheelers were loading everything up and he was gone. I was dancing at the fence line and waving bye-bye when they pulled out. Some people hate themselves so much that they only feel content when everyone around them are as miserable as they are. And our second story. Want me to go on call even though it takes me hours to travel to and from work? No problem. This happened about 4 years ago. I'm a nurse and work in a relatively specialized field. I was employed casually in a smaller 6-bedded unit in a private hospital. Because of the nature of my specialty, this particular area required 2 nurses in attendance at all times. 2 nurses to 6 patients is a dream ratio and virtually unheard of in private health. To combat this, most hospitals that have beds for this particular specialty area combine them with another ward so that they can staff us down and allow the regular nurses to cover us. However, for some reason, this hospital had located their beds completely separate to any other unit. This meant they had no choice to safely staff us but to roster 2 nurses on at all times, and our manager stood her ground and refused to budge on that requirement. Because I was casually employed, there was always the possibility that my hours could be cut or shifts canceled at any time. However, because they needed both nurses present at all times, they couldn't do that. Even if we had no patients in this particular specialty area, they had to keep 2 nurses available in case we needed to admit. If we had no patients at all, some nurses would go on call, but because I relied on public transport or bicycle commuting to get to work, my manager understood that I couldn't go on call because I couldn't return to the workplace in a reasonable time, and instead I'd be sent to help out in other areas. Our manager had, in addition to her other duties, become the project lead on a large expansion within our facility, and had performed very well in the role. So well, in fact, that when another facility under the same company was expanding, she was headhunted to lead their expansion project as well. She was compelled to a secondment that would require her to live out of state for several months, and as a result, we would be given a new acting manager. To our dismay, we discovered that the acting manager was from a ward where it was well known that the staff could not stand her. Sure enough, within days, she began doing things like canceling our staff and moving her surplus staff into our area when she was low on numbers and overstaffed, costing them to us, even though they lacked the appropriate training and experience to work in our area. Anything to make her budget look better, which at the same time made our budget look worse. It all came to a head one morning. After 2 hours of a 12-hour shift, we discharged our last patient. I was literally on the phone finalizing the patient discharge when our acting manager called the other nurse on shift and instructed both of us to clock out immediately and go on call. Confused, I rang her back. Me. Hi, AM, it's OP. I just got a message saying you want us to clock out and go home. You may not be aware, although our previous manager was, but I take public transport to and from work. I can't be on call. AM, that doesn't matter. You have no patients. I can't pay for you to be on the ward doing nothing, and no other areas require help today. I need you to clock off and go home. Me. Are you sure? We're halfway through checking the emergency trolley. There's a massive pile of follow-up calls to make, and we haven't even stripped the patient room yet. AM, that doesn't matter. Bring me your phone and keys and clock off. Me. What are you going to do if there's an admission? It'll take me over an hour to get back. AM. Well, I'll sit there until you can get back. I was fuming. The other nurse began resealing the emergency trolley, and I stopped her. We'd been instructed to leave, and leave we would. I marched the phone and keys to our acting manager and handed them over. As I did so, she said, "You can't be paid to sit and make phone calls. That has to be done when you have patients." I replied, "We are busy with the patients when we have patients. Besides, it's only just past 9 a.m., and most of the follow-up calls are to families with children who are busy doing school runs. I wouldn't answer a call from an unknown number before 9 a.m. I handed the keys over, clocked off, and began the journey home. I hadn't reached home yet before I got a message from my other workplace asking for a nurse for the night shift and offering an overtime payment. Now, I was booked for the day shift at my second job the next day and knew we had no theater cases booked, which meant the likelihood of that shift being canceled was also high. I couldn't afford to sit at home waiting for work if we didn't have patients, but just to be sure, I gave the union a quick call and they managed to illuminate something wonderful. As a casual employee, I was not entitled to be on call at all. That meant not only could they not ask me to be on call, I was not entitled to the measly $26 allowance that permanent employees received. As soon as I clocked out, my shift had ended. Armed with that knowledge, I rang my acting manager and informed her that I'd been offered paying work that night and as a consequence would need to cancel my shift the following day. She was quite hostile, asking, "Do you normally cancel work here to work elsewhere?" I replied, "I don't normally have my shifts canceled at all, but I'm not a charity and cannot sit at home unpaid when I could be paid to work elsewhere. I have a family to support." After this call, I sent a quick email to my usual manager outlining the acting manager's request and why I'd left the ward disorganized, the emergency trolley unsealed, and a stack of work not done, and went to bed to have a nap. I was awoken at approximately 16:15 in the afternoon by my wife looking confused. My acting manager had rung and left a message with her that we were admitting a patient and she required me back at work. I was bemused. The acting manager should not even have been there at that time of the afternoon and clearly lacked the stones to talk to me directly. No matter, I rang the hospital supervisor. Me. "Hi, it's OP. I just got a message via my wife that I'm a bit confused about. Apparently there's a patient and you want me to come in to work for a shift?" Supervisor. "That's right. We're admitting your area. We need you back in." Me. "You know my shift was canceled, right?" Supervisor. "AM told me you were on call." Me. "Well, I can't be on call. I'm a casual employee. My shift was canceled. Besides, by the time I've dressed, packed, got on my bicycle, ridden half an hour to my nearest train station, caught the train, changed to a tram, then walked the rest of the way, then showered and changed, it'll be..." Quick check of time. 18:30. My shift was meant to end at 19:30. I don't think I'm going to be much help to you. I heard the sound of the phone being covered in a muffled voice before shouting and ranting began in the background. It was my acting manager, still clearly there and clutching her pearls about how unreasonable it was that it would take me 2 hours to return to work. As the ranting continued, I spoke on the phone again. "Supervisor, it's OP. I know you have AM shouting at you in the background, but right now I'm the person you need to be listening to because I called you. AM is well aware of how long it takes me to return to work because I told her this morning. She knew when she asked me to clock off that I would not be returning to work. I'm sorry she gave you the impression that I could be on call, but I cannot. Now, as I'm not able to assist you any further and am not on the clock, I will be ending this conversation." And I put the phone down. I got a couple of confused texts about why I wasn't working the next day, and WTF happened on the ward from the night staff when they arrived and began resealing the emergency trolley and arranging for after-hours bed cleans. I had a week off after that. Unfortunately, this particular manager appears to be Teflon-coated, but I've never had a shift canceled since. And our last story. HOA Karen is demanding the shed be removed. My HOA in Northern Virginia exists because it exists. There are 2 trails, 3 basketball courts, and a pond. We pay maybe $40 a month in HOA fees, aka basically nada, 150 homes in total. In 2007, we installed a shed in our backyard. The shed is 8 feet tall, meets county setback requirements, and is visible, somewhat, from the street at the right angle. We never asked our HOA, ACC, Architectural Control Committee, for permission. This is because several neighbors had put up fences, installed tree houses, trampolines, sheds, etc., without anyone saying boo about it. Fast forward 15 years. New neighbors move in behind us. Husband is a certified wimp. Wife is a hate has no home here type person who drives an Escalade and seems to feel that way about hate, except when it comes to her neighbors. She's gotten all crazy about my shed and my neighbor's treehouse, called in the county to have a building inspector check for setback compliance. It complies, and the inspector said so. She's now insisting the ACC take action against the shed and the neighbor's treehouse for not having been approved by the HOA. ACC is getting agitated, but I'm not sure if it's about me or about her. Now, this was 15 years ago that it was installed. I have proof. The HOA has no language reserving rights if it fails to enforce the rules or covenants. I told her and the HOA to go pound sand given the passage of time and their failure to enforce. Besides the HOA itself, I cannot see why anyone would be bothered about a stupid shed. It houses things that are too unsightly to be left outside. Like if you weren't in an HOA, would she complain? Why? Is her end bright pink or blocking the view or anything else ridiculous? Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.